Hey guys, this is Eckhart Slaughter. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars video. Today we're continuing our coverage of the Clone Wars in preparation for Season 7. As I've mentioned, I've been doing my rewatch and loving it, by the way, so expect more of these videos in the coming days. If there's something specifically you guys would like to see me cover, let me know down in the comments. I know there's a lot of want for me to cover the Umbara arc and the Battle of Umbara, so that is on my list, so I'm interested in any other ideas that you guys have. So today we'll be addressing a question that I've actually got a lot both on Twitter and YouTube, and that's why specifically do some clones just look different than others? And before my rewatch, I assumed that all appearance differences in clones could be attributed simply to haircuts, tattoos, or personal styling choices, and while that does tie into it, there is a bit more to talk about here, as is evident when you watch the Clone Wars itself. So, most obviously, some clones actually have different color eyes. Personally, I do think some look a different shade of brown or maybe even hazel, but I can't really prove that. But Edge, for example, has blue eyes. And other clones look like their hair comes in different patterns. Now, some of that is definitely just due to personal grooming choices, but it's worth talking about. More notably, we also have clones like 99 or the Bad Batch, who are very clearly different than the standard clone trooper. So, how can these differences be explained? Well, let's get into it. And first of all, a large element is obviously choice. Captain Rex, for example, probably does not have naturally blonde hair. It was most likely dyed, and that was the case with other clones like Gree. When the clones were incorporated into the armies of the Republic, they were encouraged to personalize their armor, make nicknames, and even alter their appearance. That's why when we see clones in Episode 2, they all look exactly like Jango Fett, but by the Clone Wars, they've personalized themselves in various ways. Clones were able to get tattoos, they were able to change their hairstyle, length, and color, and while that's the obvious explanation for the deviation, it does go further than that. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised if, especially as the Clone Wars progressed, some clones did have naturally changing hair colors. And I think one example of this perhaps is Hotshot and the other clone cadets that we see in Season 2. Hotshot is just a kid, but already has blonde hair. Now, it's 100% possible that at a young age, clones now are given access to stuff like hair dye, but there's also another possibility, and that's the fact that we know the genetic sample from Jango Fett by this point is being stretched extremely thin. This is sort of a weird case. These clones are probably 10 years old, and Jango Fett by this point had only died a few years earlier, but the Kaminoans still seem concerned with the newer generations of clones, even those bred before the death of Jango Fett, which suggests to me, at least, that perhaps making so many clones from one person does occasionally present issues, or that the sample was already being stretched thin and they had anticipated being able to collect more. Also, in reference to Domino Squad, we also learned that even within the Kamino system, there are different techniques used to produce clones, which could result not only in greater or less efficiency and effectiveness, but also perhaps some visual differences. And we can see this in personality as well. Now, personality is difficult because a portion of how you act is due to your environment, maybe what battles you participated in, while another is genetic. However, when we see something like the Umbaran arc, it's very clear that two clones have a distinct personality. I mean, we see how 5 acts versus Rex, or even Dogma. There's also expanded universe material which indicates that clones can be defined by their distinctiveness, or conversely, their similarity to Jango Fett's original genetics. So that 5% difference that a clone could have might manifest in, say, different color eyes. And that takes us back to the issue of different color eyes, which is most likely due to some difference in DNA, or perhaps even a mutation during the growth process. Those certainly weren't uncommon and can explain some clones like 99. The Essential Guide to Warfare specifically states that by the time the Jedi were overseeing the cloning process, only about 3.5% of clones had some sort of aberration. The Bad Batch had mutations which were seen as a positive and also looked quite differently, but we also have clones who were failures or who could not serve in combat roles. And I mean, this is just the callousness of the Republic and of the Clone Wars generally, I guess. However, there are other explanations for differences in appearance. Now, this is one area where the movies were held back just because of technology, but if you have 10,000 people with the exact same genetics grow up, there will be some variation. For example, one of my back teeth has a slight spot on it. You can't see it unless you're my dentist, but apparently that's because I had a fever when I was a baby and my tooth didn't form completely right. Doesn't impact me in any way, but it's a visually distinctive feature, obviously a very small one. But with clones being grown in extreme numbers, things like nutrition, sickness, exposure to certain elements, and whatever else could affect everything from height to testosterone and other hormones, hair, beard growth, and whatever else. And I mean, most of that was controlled for on Kamino, but there would be, I think, noticeable variation, which you would not be able to control for. I mean, I'm not a geneticist. I do have a couple of geneticist friends, so I think this could be an interesting discussions at some point. But my point is that genetics alongside your environment significantly can change your appearance. And because we know that there was variation in both of those aspects, clones sometimes looked pretty different. In fact, I would argue that the clone army would actually be far more varied than what we see in either the movie, certainly, but also the Clone Wars TV show as well. That, however, is just my opinion, and I'm really curious to hear what you guys think of this topic. Did you enjoy this video? Do you think clones would actually look different in real life? I'm curious to hear from people, especially who have a science background, and are you enjoying my coverage of the Clone Wars? All of that and more, as I said, down below. No hashtag AskAtQuestion today, but if there's something you'd like me to answer at the end of a future video, leave it down below with that hashtag, and I'll try to get to it. Anyways, have a good one, and as always, may the Force be with you.